presentation is divided into 3 topics respectively. Our first topic will be on Overview and Practice of Treasury Bill in Malaysia by Fiscal Policy and Debt Management Office, Ministry of Finance, Malaysia. Continue with the topic on Roles and Responsibility of Central Bank of Malaysia by Bank Negara Malaysia representative itself. And the last topic will be on Accounting and Reporting related to Treasury Bill by the Accountant General's Department of Malaysia. First and foremost, I would like to invite the Honorable Ms. Sarimah Hussein, Director of Central Operation and Agency Services Division, Accountant General's Department of Malaysia, to deliver her opening remarks on this very pleasant afternoon. Please welcome Ms. Sarimah Hussein.
Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Moderator Mr. Amir Cik Mansur. First and foremost, on behalf of the Accountant General Department of Malaysia, I would like to welcome everyone to online study visit on the topic Treasury Bill Implementation and Issuing in Malaysia. My warmest welcome to Mrs. Regina Jesus de Souza, Director General of Treasury Timor-Leste, Timor-Leste Treasury Officers, all T-CoP Advisory Services Program Research Team, speakers from Malaysia, which represented by Ministry of Finance, Central Bank of Malaysia, and officer from Accountant General Department. Last but not least, I would also like to welcome PEMNA Secretariat team to this online study visit. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. Since pandemic COVID-19 hits the world, physical study visit cannot be conducted. Therefore, PEMNA has introduced this online study visit as one of PEMNA initiatives to ensure continuity in PEMNA's program. This allows member countries to continue to keep in touch, updated, and to share experience and knowledge in public finance under PEMNA platform. As a brief introduction, Malaysian Federal Government Debt Securities consists of 8 instruments, namely MGS, Malaysia Government Securities, MGII, Malaysia Government Investment Issue, MITB, Malaysia Islamic Treasury Bill, Malaysia Treasury Bill, Sukuk Foreign Market Loan, Multilateral Loan, and Bilateral Loan. Basically, Malaysia has both domestic and external debt. These debts are governed by their own act. For the domestic debt, those debts are governed by the Local Loan Act 1959, Government Funding Act 1983, and Treasury Bill Act 1946. This act covers the MGS, MGII, and MITB as well as Malaysia Treasury Bill. As for the external debt, it is regulated by our External Loan Act 1963, Loan Islamic Development Bank Act 1977, and Loan Asian Development Bank Act 1968. Focusing on today's topic, Malaysia Treasury Bill are issued to raise short-term fund for government working capital. It does help government to control temporary liquidity fluctuation during the financial year. And the maturity term for the Treasury Bill range from 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year. Based on the Timor-Leste proposal, I understand that Treasury of Timor-Leste is exploring the possibility of introducing their own Treasury Bill. We are honored to share as much as possible of our experience in managing the Treasury Bill from an overview perspective to the accounting and reporting process. Together with the Accountant General Department today are Fiscal Policy and Debt Management Office, responsible in planning and regulating the Treasury Bill issuance, Central Bank of Malaysia, which is responsible for issuing the securities on behalf of government, and from General Department in charge of accounting and reporting. Lastly, I sincerely hope that this study visit will bring a fruitful and meaningful discussion to all. Thank you.
Thank you for the gentle and speech by Ms. Sarimah Hussein. For your information, the Central Operation and Agency Services Division under the Accountant General's Department of Malaysia is one of the responsible parties for managing treasury bills in Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, next, I was honored to invite Mrs. Regina Jesus de Souza, the Director General of Treasury, Ministry of Finance, Timor-Leste, to deliver the opening speech. Please welcome.
Thank you for Mr. Amir Simansor for the time. My name is Regina from Director General of Treasury, Ministry of Finance, Timor-Leste. First of all, I would like to Your Excellency, Director of Central Operation and Agency Service Division, Accountant General's Department of Malaysia, Ms. Sarimah Hussein, Your Excellency, Assistant Director of Accountant General's Department of Malaysia, Mr. Amir Semansor, Your Excellency, Deputy Director of Fiscal and Economic Division of Ministry of Finance of Malaysia, Mr. Imri Doladi, Your Excellency, Deputy Director of Central Bank of Malaysia, Ms. Nurasikin Asri, Your Excellency, Principal Assistant Director, Accountant General Department of Malaysia, Ms. Erda Esdiani Ahmad Toha. First of all, we would like to extend our appreciation to PEMNA Secretariat for selecting our proposal and making this online study visit possible to allow us be able to learn from Malaysia's experience in issuing and management of treasury bills. Furthermore, we also would like to thank you Malaysia for offering its willingness and utilizing its most precious time for shared knowledge and experience in issuing and management of treasury bills, which we consider very valuable to us. And as this area is still new to us, and it is the first time that we are exploring it. Further, learning based other countries' experience and expertise, such as Malaysia, is important to us before initiation. We believe that with the experience and knowledge that Malaysia has for many years in issuing and management of treasury bills and other treasury securities, will enrich our current understanding and knowledge in moving forward to issue treasury bills and other treasury securities in Timor-Leste. Since restoration of our independence in 2002, this is the first time that Treasury Timor-Leste has considered seriously to issue treasury bills and other government securities as part of our reform strategies to diversify our economy and in order to lessen our dependence on non-renewable resource to finance government budget, and hope that through this study visit, we may take away important knowledge and experience shared by Malaysia during the next presentation. As already shared through the agenda on this online study visit, there are a number of questions that we have raised earlier, which we think may be able to allow us to better understand and process and mechanism of issuing Treasury Bill based on the Malaysia experience and how to proceed with issuing of Treasury Bills. Therefore, the next presentation and discussion will most likely be centered around this question, but it may also be possible to our team may ask or raise other relevant discussion and question during the next session. And therefore, we thank you, Malaysia, in advance for its kind willingness to share such relevant experience and knowledge. To conclude, once again, I would like to thank you also in advance all presenters of this study visit for your valuable time and effort to share us such important knowledge and experience with us today. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you to Mrs. Regina Jesus de Souza for addressing the good hope and humble spirit of wanting to learn. May this session will be beneficial for both of us. Before we start our session today, the PEMNA Secretariat would love to invite all participants to join an online photo session. Please ensure all your devices' camera is turned on for this purpose. I think you may wave your hands during the photo shoot session. Ms. Jamie, I give it to you.
Everyone, please wave your hand at the camera for a second. And say cheese.
Cheese.
Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you all for participating.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Ms. Jamie. All right, now, moving along to our session, who will be speaking to us on the overview and practice of Treasury Bill in Malaysia. Section of our first Imri Dol Hadi bin Abdul Wahab is a Deputy Director of Fiscal Policy and Debt Management Office from Ministry of Finance Malaysia. He represents the department which is currently handling the planning and regulation of Treasury Bill issuance in Malaysia. I believe Mr. Imri is the right person to present you on this topic. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Imri Dol Hadi.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and very good afternoon. Here in Malaysia, the time is around 3:15 o'clock. I believe in Timor-Leste out there it's just after 2, right? 2:15. Is it? Or it's past 4 already? All right. Okay, let me begin my presentation. So basically, let me share you with the first slide overview. I think everyone can see the slides, right? Can listen to us? Okay, all right. So basically, in Malaysia, the government of Malaysia needs financial resource to finance our operating and also development expenditure. These are the main expenditure that we cover in Malaysia for the federal government. However, for operating expenditure, we can only fund our operating expenditure by revenue. So it means that we cannot borrow for operating expenditure, and the borrowings is only to finance our development expenditure. So basically, to allow us to fund or to borrow, so the Article 111 of the Federal Constitution provide the power or authority for the federal government and the Ministry of Finance to make loans under federal law. So basically, in terms of borrowings, as I mentioned by Puan Sarima, there are basically two types of borrowing that we have. The debt, the source of income from domestic sources, and also from offshore or external sources. So for domestic instrument, there are four main instruments, of which two are conventional instruments, namely our Malaysia Government Security and also Malaysian Treasury Bills. These govern under respective act, specific act, namely the Local Act 1959, and also the Treasury Bills Local Loan Act in 1946. So both of these are conventional instruments. And at the same time, as we develop our Islamic finance market, so we have our own dedicated act for our Islamic or Sharia compliant borrowing. This is under Government Funding Act, which govern these two instruments, Malaysia Government Investment Issues, MGII, and also the Malaysian Islamic Treasury Bills. So if we want to zoom it specific into this Treasury Bill, so basically in Malaysia, for Treasury Bills, we have two instruments. One is conventional, MTB, and the other is Sharia compliant instrument, which is Malaysia Islamic Treasury Bills. So all of these borrowings is basically to finance our DE, and can also be for to refinance or repay for our debt. And in terms of our policy, we prioritize our domestic sources, which means that we borrow, majority of our borrowing come from the domestic market. I think 3% of our debt is from offshore sources, while the remaining 97% is coming from our domestic market. And it is also our policy to borrow at the lowest possible cost at the reasonable risk. So it means that when we plan for our borrowing, we have to look into multiple factors in the form of maturity profile, in terms of the yield charged to our papers and so on. So these are about this instrument. In terms of the role of agencies, there are three main actors in governing this our borrowing. First, the role of at the Fiscal Policy Office under the Ministry of Finance. So our function is as a middle office, where we the one who do the planning in terms of the borrowings. We look into how we can divide our maturity profile. We plan for the quantum of borrowing that we want to do. Let's say, for example, we have 50 billion worth of borrowing we need to do this year. So we need to plan how much is borrowing is via this instrument, MGS, how much is via MGII, how much is via Treasury Bills. So this is the function of this middle office. And the second one is our front office is Bank Negara, our central bank. They are the one who execute the transaction, who deals with the principal dealers out there in the market, the one who execute the transaction, and also the one who receive and then pass the money to be which is then going to be recorded by our back office. This back office is the function is currently being carried by our Accountant General Department. So these three main agencies that are responsible to process this government borrowing. Next slide. Okay, in terms of the act that govern these Treasury Bills, there are two acts. Number one is our for Malaysian Treasury Bills. It is governed under the Treasury Bills Local Act 1946, and it's a conventional. This is a conventional paper, and as you know, as Treasury Bills is always it's a short-term paper, which is mandated at 3, 6, 9, or 12 month maturity. And this act basically kept our borrowing under this act. So the total T-bills must not be exceeding ringgit Malaysia 10 billion as at end of the year. This is for our conventional instrument. The other instrument is our Malaysia Islamic Treasury Bills, MITB. This is a Sharia compliant instrument. It's equivalent to Malaysia Treasury Bills, but this is a Sharia compliant. So basically, I can share with you more in terms of the Sharia principle, which is basically is governed under commodity murabaha transaction, and the underlying commodity that govern this transaction is in terms of rubber, palm oil, if I'm not mistaken, and also plastic resin. However, this Islamic Treasury Bills, since it is governed under this Government Funding Act, there are two instruments that reside under this act, which is our MGII and also Malaysia Islamic Treasury Bills. So we also cap or limit the amount of borrowing that we can do under this act, and it is combined, joined together with our MGS. So this we call this as our domestic debt ceiling, which is prior to the crisis, it is capped at 55% of GDP. However, as of now, in November last year, the Parliament has allowed us establish another limit. We increase it to 65% of GDP, basically to allow us to finance the development expenditure throughout these 5 years of our development 5-year development plan, and also to finance our COVID-19 fund. This COVID-19 fund is specifically created to finance our recovery, stimulus, and also for health to combat our COVID-19 pandemic. Can I move on? So in terms of this detail of this treasury bills, I think we can share this with you, and this is available widely on the net. Basically, there are 17 sections covered under this Malaysia Treasury Bills, and the more important one is the section number 2, 3, and 4. In general, this Malaysia Treasury Bills basically empowered both the Minister of Finance and also the Central Bank in executing the transaction for Malaysia Treasury Bills. So, for example, under item 2, the power to borrow, Minister of Finance is given the power to borrow the money, and the subject that this sum should not be exceeding 10 million ringgit. And at the same time, once we borrow this money, then we want to transfer this to finance our development fund. It is allowed to be transferred into development fund, but only with the prior approval of Dewan Rakyat. Means that this is be tabled at our parliament with a specific resolution. So this is under the approval of our parliamentarians. And at the same time, in terms of number 3, section 3 and section 4, since this is government borrowing, so we charge our borrowing upon our revenue and assets. So and because of this, all these proceeds must enter into our consolidated account. There is one consolidated account under federal government, which has 3 main components. I will share with you later in terms of the structure of the federal government accounts. And at the same time, this act also empower our central bank, which is in this act it is called the bank. So the central bank will, subject to the market, will fix and determine the time at which the treasury bills are to be issued and also be paid. And at this, all of this section is basically, I think once we share this act, you can have a look and read together. And basically, a lot of this act, the provision under this act, basically give the power for Bank Negara to execute the transaction, where they coordinating the issuance, and also coordinating together with the private our dealers and so on, and also all the dealings with our financial institution is also defined under this act. This is all be detailed out in the section 7, section 8, and also 9 and so on. So all of these basically to govern the mechanism and of the transaction, and also how we can execute the transaction. And at the same time, from section 10, 11, and 12, and so on, this is in terms of governing the recording, the transaction, and also to ensure that there are no false entries. No, the information recorded must be accurate, and also it is also bank responsibility to seek information, to inspect the transaction, and also keep the record of the copies. So basically, all this act is very comprehensive, covering a very wide range of responsibility and duties of both Minister of Finance and also the central bank. Next slide. In terms of Treasury bills, basically it is almost a carbon copy of the Treasury Bill Act, which is under Government Funding Act. The only difference between this MITB Act, Government Funding Act, and also Malaysia Treasury Bills in this section 2A, where there is a specific provision that spells how all these instruments should be issued in accordance with the Sharia principle for this to be qualified as an Islamic finance instrument. So other than that, all of those mirroring whatever the provision that is under the Malaysian MTB Act. If I can move on next. So overall, I just share with you the structure of our account, how the flow of transaction or the fund will be. So as I mentioned earlier, you see number one, revenue can only finance our operating expenditure. And then for our development fund, we created this as part of our trust fund. This development fund is basically to finance our 5-year development plan, which is I think recently has been just produced by our economic planning unit. So all these borrowings will be recorded under consolidated loan account, and each of these instrument, MGII, MGS, Treasury Bills, and also all our sukuk will be transferred to development fund. And I think recently in year 2020, since we have created a new fund named COVID-19 Fund, all of these borrowings are also allowed to be transferred to COVID-19 Fund for us to fund our recovery and stimulus package. I think other than that, I think that's all, the introduction, overview of these Treasury bills. I think that's all. Yeah, thank you. We can proceed to Q&A.
Thank you very much, Mr. Imri, for addressing this interesting topic. Hopefully, if there's further question, you may ask during this session.
Or you can respond in written form if you have additional question. I hope my presentation give you clarity in terms of the overview of the management of Treasury bills.
Good afternoon. Can we ask questions from our side?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you very much for Mr. Imri for the presentation. And as you have mentioned that the Treasury Bill Act of Malaysia, we are also at the moment trying to in the process of preparing relevant legislation. We are also trying to prepare a legislation to give legal basis for issuing of Treasury bill in Timor-Leste. So it would be very beneficial to us as reference the Treasury Bill Act of Malaysia. If we can, if you could share it with us to give us an idea to draft our own legislation, that would be very, very good. And also, I would like to ask you a question in regards to the issuing of the Treasury Bill. Is when Malaysia issue Treasury Bill, is this Treasury Bill is actually issued by an agent or by a commercial bank or by central bank? And what is the role of central bank in issuing and management of Treasury Bill in Malaysia? Thank you.
I think later the central bank can also clarify this with you. If I'm not mistaken, this as Treasury Bills is issued by our central bank as agent bank on behalf of government of Malaysia. So they are issuing on behalf of government. So they are the one who dealings, the direct dealings with the market, with the dealers, and executing the transaction. And also the system of these Treasury Bills all reside at the Bank Negara Central Bank office.
So I have one more question for you, Mr. Imrit. If you have explained that earlier, that the Treasury Bill, the maturity period is for 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year. We want to know, because this is something that's still new to us, when the bills reaches maturity, how do you, what do you do from that at that stage? Are you do you auction it, or what do you do when that Treasury Bills reach maturity? And the next one, the buyers of the Treasury Bill in Malaysia's experience, are they like only for financial institutions, for individuals, for company, and foreigners as well, or how it is set in based on Malaysia's experience in issuing of T-bill? Thank you.
Well, I think this will be touched by Bank Negara later as our, but I can give you some brief answer to that. Upon maturity, we will redeem the papers. But of course, our issuance is at discount. Is that if the issuance is at is 1 billion, then maybe at discount is less than 1 billion. But upon maturity, we will settle it at the face value of 1 billion, for example. So the redemption can come in various sources. So since we have all our loans or borrowings is residing under one dedicated account, consolidated account. So this is all will be related, all these term of repayment or redemption and also issuance. This is related closely with our cash flow management. So to have this cash flow management, we have these monthly cash flow meetings between these 3 agencies and also other revenue collecting agencies as well. So we can plan when is the redemption or repayment and when is the issuance for each instrument that to finance for our operation during the year. So of course, when this paper matured, so we, based on our cash flow planning, we do have the source of fund to redeem or repay for each paper that will be maturing in the specific time. All the buyers, if I'm not mistaken, Bank Negara will explain with you later, because all of these transactions will be via our portal, FAST, F-A-S-T. So all of those players, dealers must be registered. So only these registered dealers be able to trade the paper. Bank Negara, I think, will share you with more details in terms of mechanism. How do we transact with the market out there?
Thank you, Cik Imri. Is there any further question by Timor-Leste, or you just want to?
Yes, we have So our Director General wants to know the act that Mr. Imri just presented about the Treasury Bill Act. Is that act approved by Parliament?
Yes, this act is approved by the Parliament, and I think the last amendment was done in January 2006. So all of those, the act itself must be approved by the Parliament, yes. But in terms of this cap, the limit to these Treasury bills, it doesn't have to go to the Parliament because it is up to the government, but we have to gazette whatever the limit that we set. Once it is approved at the cabinet level, and then we bring it to our supreme ruler, which is I think in certain countries should be the president. Once it is agreed by the supreme ruler, then we can gazette and publish it, and so that it is a public information. But of course, once it is published, it is gazetted, then the parliamentarians may debate about this the cap, whether it is adequate or not. So this means that the act itself is approved by the parliament, but the cap or the limit of the T-bills is up to the government to recommend to the supreme ruler to for his approval.
We have one more question.
Yes, please.
Imri, ya? Imri. Hello, Mr. Imri, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
First of all, thanks for a very informative presentation that you have made. My question pertained to the cap that you mentioned earlier. If I'm not mistaken, you said that it was 55% of GDP, if I'm correct. So basically, when you first introduced T-bill, as Timor-Leste is starting to also introduce this, what would be the recommendation for country like Timor-Leste, which is starting to introduce T-bill? What would be the recommended percentage, the proportion of percentage to GDP for T-bill? My second question was, who approved the cap of T-bill? But you already mentioned that it's the government itself, and it doesn't have to go to the parliament. But my question is, what would you recommend for a country like Timor-Leste to have the cap as the percentage of GDP? Thank you.
Thank you for the question about the limit to our debt. This is widely discussed at the international arena. And if I'm not mistaken, based on my reading, I'm not expert. Based on my personal reading, there is no specific limit in terms of our public sector or government indebtedness. What is the amount of debt? But of course, what is important is that we have to carry the debt sustainability analysis. Can we sustain in terms of financing our debt, in terms of not only financing our debt, but basically how do we finance our debt service? Does the debt service charges, does the revenue that we have be able to service our interest, the coupon that we pay? For example, in Malaysia, that is so-called self-imposed limit, our own self-discipline. It is not governed anywhere under any act. We try to limit our debt service charges not more than 15% of our revenue. In terms of interest payment, it must not be 50% of our revenue. But of course, for the past 2 years, because of this crisis, we have slightly exceeded that. But because of this self-imposed discipline that we have, so we have this intention to go back to this self-imposed limit by year 2024, 2025. This is in terms of debt servicing. In terms of the cap for the debt, I think what we can do is that we should have our own forecast or what is our development plan. what is the funding that we need to finance our development plan. So from there, we should know what is our requirement to fund. Then we apply certain percentage to that. For example, in Malaysia, back in 1980s, the cap is not in the form of GDP for our overall domestic debt. It is in terms of ringgit. But starting in year 1997, 1998, then we revised our debt ceiling from this absolute ringgit term to GDP. Why? Because at that time we have a financial crisis, so we want to finance this to combat for the crisis. So we revised our act to 45% of GDP. But then again, in 2008, because of this global financial crisis, so there is another need for us to fund for our stimulus package and also our development plan. So we revised this ceiling from 45 to 50 and then 55% of GDP. Again, after 10 years, the story repeats itself. In year 2020 and 2021, we revised our debt limit from 55 to 65% GDP. So basically, the cap that we have here for Malaysia is according we do this the cap is for our own financing needs, for our own development plan. But of course, I think operating agency out there, they are looking into not only the level of debt, the size of the debt that you have, but how affordable, how can you afford to pay this debt in the form of at least the debt servicing, which is usually is measured in the form of as debt service as percentage to revenue. And also we can also look into from the perspective the total debt as a ratio to revenue as well. So this is how you gauge your affordability. I hope that can explain. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you actually answered the question. Just one quick question. The 55% to GDP, is it a whole debt proportion or is just the T-bill proportion to GDP?
Okay, the 55% is to our these three instrument for our domestic instrument, which is this Malaysia Government Securities, this MGII, and also this Malaysia Islamic Treasury Bills. Means that both the 65% of GDP govern two acts.
Okay.
Okay, this top two act, the Loan Local Act and also Government Funding Act, we kept these two at 65% of GDP now. The Loan Local Act and also Government Funding Act. As for the Treasury Bills, 1946, this we kept at 10 billion ringgit.
Okay.
And also for the external loan, we kept it at 35 billion ringgit. So all these acts have their own limit. But of course, prior to the crisis, we have this self-imposed limit where we have the overall federal government debt at 55% of the initiative as a self-discipline.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful, Imri.
Okay, Mr. Imri and the Ministry of Finance Timor-Leste. Now, we will continue to our next presenter, who will be speaking to us on roles and responsibility of Central Bank of Malaysia. Leave an introduction of our presenter. She is a Deputy Director of Central Bank of Malaysia, who currently responsible on investment operations and financial market regarding issuance of Treasury Bill in Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Nur Ashikin Astri.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Amir. Okay, so my name is Shikin. So I'll be touching on some of the questions that was asked earlier on central bank role in issuance of Malaysian Treasury bills. So please feel free to stop me as and when you have any questions or clarification. Okay, so I think together with me also I have my team here, Adrian and Cedric, which will also be happy to chip in as and when necessary. So what I will cover today is a brief overview on Malaysian bond market, and then we look at the issuance of treasury bills as well as the investors profile. And lastly, I'll cover the role of central bank in terms of planning, issuance, and also the settlement of these issuances. So if we can straight away go to the overview of Malaysian bond market. So currently, the overall Malaysian bond market comprise a balanced composition of government and also corporate bond. And the government bond market comprise or constitute of 55% of the overall debt securities, and the remaining 45% are corporate bonds. And in terms of the domestic government bond itself, almost 97% of the government debt are issued on long term. That means it's only about 3% is issued via these treasury bills. So if we look back in terms of the role of these treasury bills, as highlighted by Imri earlier, that it is a role for the government to manage the cash flow, as well as providing a benchmark to the ringgit domestic bond market. So in terms of, if you look at the left-hand chart slide, over the years 2015 to 2019, the government actually has issued a relatively stable amount of treasury bills, and these are mainly used for benchmarking as well as cash flow management purposes. Some of it can be retired earlier before the end of the year because by then it's no longer needed. But given the pandemic situation in 2020 and 2021, treasury bills has been used slightly more compared to previous year. Current outstanding is around 28 billion ringgit. In terms of investor profiles, treasury bills are similar to the long-term government bond, MGS and MGII, are open to all investors. The current composition, if you see on the bottom left-hand charts, is mainly comprised of the banks and resident as well as non-resident investors. So if we look at the profile of the investors, typically for the banks, they will use this short-term liquidity to match their short-term liability. This short-term treasury bills to match their short-term liability, and as well as for the non-resident investors to complete the curve in terms of their investment, to manage their duration and whatnot. In terms of corporate issuer, I mentioned earlier that issuance of government treasury bills also important for the benchmarking, where we complete the curve from 3 months up to 30 years. And this has support the development in terms of the issuances of corporate. So corporate are able to issue short-term commercial paper to finance their short-term cash flow needs. So if we go on the next slide, similar to what Imri has mentioned, we issue both in conventional and also Islamic. Okay, this is peculiar to Malaysia because our money market, our bond market run the Islamic and conventional system in parallel. In terms of the issuance or market conventions, issuance method, Bank Negara will conduct on behalf of the government on auction basis. So the auction will be on competitive multiple price auction, which means that the bidders will bid a price and they will be allotted to the amount or to the price that they submitted. So in terms of the frequency, we issue once a week on various interval based on the cash flow need of the government. Size of the issuance around 500 to 3 billion per issue. And in terms of tenure, 3 months up to 1 year. So it depends really on the demand from the investors as well as the need of the cash flow. So in terms of the pricing, is issued based on discounted basis. Next, Bank Negara derived its power from the Central Bank Act 2009, where in the function of the central bank as banker and also financial agent of the government. So this is where mainly we plan the issuance for the government and together with the long-term issuances, long-term financing based on the financing need of the government, and we will make recommendation for the government, but final approval will actually come from the government. Upon approval from the government, Bank Negara will make the auction calendar available to market participants that they are prepared in terms of what is coming, and they can also match and manage the cash flow accordingly. In terms of issuance, Bank Negara used a system that is internally developed. I think this system was developed in early year 2000, where it's a web-based system called FAST, fully automated system for tendering. This system is used mainly by Bank Negara and also market participants to initiate the process of issuing securities, short-term and also long-term. So whenever we issue the Treasury Bills, the MGS, MGI, and also central bank papers for central bank monetary operations, we will use this system. And Rentas is real-time gross settlement system, RTGS system. So there is an integration between FAST and the final settlement system. In terms of coupon and maturity, as the banker to the government, we also manage for the government. I think there was a question earlier in terms of what happened on maturity date. So on maturity date, we will be debiting the government account, and we will be crediting the holders of the Treasury Bills account. So that will actually done automatically, and because the government also have account with the central bank, all this system can be linked up. So let me just go through the flow of an issuance procedure on FAST and also Rentas. So essentially, if you start from the top left-hand side, upon issuance, Bank Negara will make the announcement 3 days before, and then we will announce and invite market participants, and principal dealers will come in and submit their bids. Bank Negara during that period of 3 days can actually monitor the bids that's come in, and then once the tender closing date, we will process the tender. And if any intervention needed and whatnot, we can do that via the system, and all this will be disseminated to the successful bidders as well as the general public, and the more detailed result will actually available to those bidders. And this information, like I mentioned earlier, will automatically be also be transmitted into our settlement system. So just quickly, this is how the website looks like. It's a secured website internally developed by Bank Negara, and we run and maintain the system. If you see down here, there's also liquidity position. This is where I mentioned earlier, this system is shared. We also use it for our monetary policy operations. So in terms of tender, the tender results are made available publicly. So this is for transparency purposes. Upon processing, we will publish it in this website. The next slide. So upon tender for the first step is on tender creation. So this will be done 3 days prior to the issuance. So here is where we will inform the market participant on all the details of the issuance, i.e. When is the issue date, the settlement date, the maturity date, as well as the issue size. And second step is once it's out, the broad information is also broadcast so that the principal dealers can start to market this to their client, investors, resident and also non-residents. So Bank Negara also have this page where we can monitor the bids that comes in. So the direct bidders are the principal dealers, and they will come in and will see whether they have fully submitted according to their obligation. Maybe I'll touch a bit on principal dealers. For issuance of government bond, we leverage on 19 principal dealers, and they collectively have obligation to subscribe to government issuances. So with if let's say they undersubscribe, there will be some administrative penalty that we can Bank Negara can impose on them. Okay, in terms of the processing, here is just an example, direct bidder and bidder. So if I can just elaborate a bit, I mentioned that all issuance must go through principal dealer. So any other issuance, any other buyer that are not principal dealers need to go through via these 19 principal dealers. So corporates or asset managers or non-resident investors must reach out to the principal dealers, and the principal dealers will submit their bids on behalf of these investors. So we will make the process where we will sort the and we will accept the lowest cost for the government. And this information is also disseminated. So if you remember earlier on the landing page, if you click into the tender result, it will go and provide you a bit more detail in terms of the auction results, what is the highest, the lowest, and the average, and what are the cut-off for the tender. Okay. As for the bidder, direct bidder, or the principal dealers itself, they can actually go into the system and they can get a more detailed results. So meaning to say, if they have submitted here from 170 to 175 or 2%, they can see whether their bids are accepted or rejected depending on the auction results. So I also mentioned earlier, this information are made available immediately in our FAST website, and it's also been transmitted into other information platforms such as Bloomberg, Bond Info Hub website, as well as Reuters. So I also provide some link here, so you can make reference and refer to it as and when needed. So I think I'll pause there and happy to take any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nurashkin Asri, for the informative and interesting talk. Now we open to the Q&A session from Timor-Leste.
Thank you for the presentation. It is very informative, and we think it's very useful for Timor-Leste. I just want to ask about the system for issuing of Treasury bill and bonds that just presented. Is the system, who in Malaysia's experience, who has the responsibility to acquire the system? Is the Minister of Finance, which means Treasury, or is that central bank? And who maintains the system? Is that responsibility of central bank or Minister of Finance of Malaysia? I think that's for now, and then maybe later there might be other questions coming up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. So for Malaysia, again, as derived or as per our Central Bank Act 2009, we actually function as a banker and also financial agent of the government. So with this, we also manages the issuance of the government securities, and with that, we take the responsibility to develop the system, and the cost is actually borne by the central bank. So we do not charge the government for the issuance or for the settlement of the.
Okay, thank you. That's very very clear. The other question is in regards to the buyers of the bills and bond. In Malaysia's experience, these buyers need to have an account with central bank in order to buy and sell treasury bills and bonds, or how it is working based on Malaysia's experience in terms of issuing and buying of treasury bills and bonds.
Okay, so the buyers does not need to have account with the central bank. The buyer need to have account with any of the authorized depository institutions. And these authorized depository institutions are essentially the banks that have account in our RTGS system. So just to share a bit with you, how the rentas work is that they will also have segregated account in a way that these banks will open the account on behalf of the client. So to answer your question, the client, the investors, does not need to have direct account with the central bank, but via their own banks, which function as authorized depository institutions, will open account at our RTGS system. So this is how we are able to profile and provide the information on who are the holders of the treasury bills. I hope I answer your question.
Just want to ask another question. In terms of issuing bills and bonds in Malaysia, how the mechanism or how what are the responsibility and roles between Minister of Finance or Treasury and central bank in terms of the responsibility in issuing and trading of bills and bonds? Thank you.
So if you can go to slide 6. So the responsibility as banker and also advisor of the government, we will provide, like I mentioned, in slide 6, we will provide recommendation on option calendar or issuance plan. So the responsibility is to provide advice, and government has the ultimate say. They need to approve what need to be issued in terms of treasury bills, or they want to go long-term MGS and whatnot. And the whole process of issuance, as a banker and financial agent of the government, the central bank will take that responsibility. So I've listed the responsibility or activities that have been done by the central bank are in page 6 of this slide.
Okay, thank you very much. And also, just want to know, apart from the Treasury Bill Act that give legal basis for issuing of bill in Treasury Bill in Malaysia, is there any other like working document or procedures or manual at lower level that elaborate in details how Treasury bills should be operated? It might not be approved by the government, but it is like a document that must be followed in terms of how it is, how when the bill is reaching its maturity, how the government should budget to repay, how it should be accounted for in the accounting system, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
I think in terms of the basic of information on Treasury bills, it is available in Bond Info Hub website. That gives you a bit of flavor on how what are the details of the issuance. That is made available publicly. I have also provided the link under page 15. In terms of the accounting, I think I don't think it's made available publicly on how you account, but I think it will be covered in the next presentation.
Istri. Thank you very much, Ms. Isri. I have one question, and that's relating to T-bill yield. So my question is, how do you determine or how do you decide what is the percentage of the yield? Because there must be, let's say, 3-month notes, 6-month notes, 1-year notes. So how do you decide the yield?
Okay, so if you look at this page, it is actually market determined. So when the principal dealers bid, so we will sort from lowest yield to highest yield. The average of the yield would be the cost of issuance of the government, because remember I said is pay as you bid or competitive bidding. So in a way that it is a weighted average of successful bid that was submitted. So the central bank do not decide on the rate. So we facilitate the auction, and the principal dealers will submit the amount as well as the rate, and that average successful bid will be the issuance of the treasury bills. So if we look at this example, the 3 months treasury bills is actually issued at a rate of 1.79%.
So it has nothing to do with the inflation, yeah?
No.
Okay.
In a way, market will determine. So this is where the development of the yield curve is very important. They will price the treasury bills according to the curve, which take into account a lot of other things, not only inflation, short-term interest rate expectation, as well as supply and demand, and so on.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks again, Ms. Nora Shiking. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, we come to the last presentation. The last presenter will be delivering her speech on accounting and reporting of Treasury Bill in Malaysia. A brief introduction of our presenter. She is a Principal Assistant Director, Accountant General's Department of Malaysia, and directly involved in accounting of Treasury Bills. She currently serves in Federal Debt Management Unit at Central Operation and Agency Services Division. Please welcome Ms. Erda Esdiani Ahmad Toha. Erda?
All right, can hear me?
Can.
Yes, we can hear from Timor-Leste.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, and very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, I am Erda. Now it's my turn to present regarding our big topic today, Treasury Bills, in terms of accounting and reporting. All right, next. Okay. Before I go further, I would like to explain in briefly as an introduction about basis of accounting in Malaysia. Federal government of Malaysia is practicing modified cash basis, right? Currently, we are also preparing Malaysian federal government financial statement based on accrual basis accounting. It is as a preparation for our fully implementation of accrual basis once accrual accounting related acts been tabled and approved by our parliament. All right. Regarding the standard for cash and modified cash basis, we are adopting IPSAS. What is IPSAS? IPSAS is International Public Sector Accounting Standard in dealing with financial under the cash basis of accounting. All right, the adoption of IPSAS actually will improve the quality and comparability in our financial information. In the same time, we also have the Government Accounting Standards, GAS, are intended to set our accounting policies and standards as well as basis for financial statement presentations that have been compiled with by the federal and state governments. This is in line with the federal constitutions and the Financial Procedure Act 1957 as mentioned previous presentation. For accrual, our standard for accrual basis, we have Malaysian Public Sector Accounting Standard, which is drawn primarily from also IPSAS, International Public Sector Accounting Standard, which is issued by the IPSAS board, and these standards are using the preparation of our national financial statement. And for your information, ladies and gentlemen, currently we have 25 MPSAS, which has been adopted from IPSAS and been certified by Government Accounting Standards Advisory Committee, known as well as GASAC, GASAC. Next, a little bit about how our federal government account all payment, all monies, and all receive, all revenues. All right. For the Malaysian government, all revenues, monies received have to be accounted for into a fund known as consolidated fund, as well as GMB has been mentioned before. All right. The consolidated fund consists of a consolidated revenue account, consolidated trust account, and also consolidated loan account. Under the Financial Procedure Act 1957, all monies received by the way of loan upon the public credit of the federation or of the state shall be kept into consolidated loan account. So it same goes to our issues today, Treasury Bill, whether MTB or MITB. So for today, we are focusing on the consolidated loan account, which has been in the red dotted box in the slide. All right. Next. By referring to the list of questions given, the question number 11, how Treasury Bill is recorded using Financial Management Information System, FMIS. So as well as in Malaysia, all accounting transactions are recorded using IGFMAS, which is known as Integrated Government Financial and Management Accounting System. Those transactions including Treasury Bills. This system recorded all transactions using accrual basis, which is later will be mapped to modified cash basis accounting. All right, ladies and gentlemen, for your information, as per presentation, previous presentation from Ministry of Finance and our Central Bank of Malaysia, Accountant General's Department of Malaysia, we are responsible to account all transactions related to Treasury bills by using this accounting systems. All transactions are recorded and accounted from the officially information and transaction which gathered from MOF, Ministry of Finance Malaysia, and Central Bank Malaysia, such as the amount of issuance, the number of stock code, the maturity period, the schedule of issuance and redemptions, all related from regarding Treasury bills are from information from MOF and Central Bank. We responsible to accounted all transaction related. All right. So next, this is several or a part of modules in our system, IGFMAS. The system was developed in 2018 and it can generate financial reporting, management reporting, and also we have analytic dashboard and budgeting reporting within the system. For Treasury bills in IGFMAS, in this system, we are using TR module or known as Treasury module, which used to record all government debts and maintain our all subsidiary related to Treasury bills. For payment and receive transactions for Treasury bills, this TR module, okay, will send the information to other module such as account payable module and account receivable module, all right, to other module to proceed with the respective transactions. All right. So now we go to how we process the Treasury bills. For accounting treatment, all right, as you can see through the slides, we have 3 steps of processes, which are issuance, amortization for accrual basis, and lastly, redemptions when it matured. All right, like as example, during issuance, normally we will issue at discount value. For example, the nominal value to be issued at that time is RM 10 million and the discount value is RM 1 million. So government will only receive RM 9 million in bank at cost value. Therefore, it will be accounted in accrual basis as debit bank RM 9 million and debit accumulated discount Treasury bills RM 1 million. Meanwhile, we will credit the nominal amount RM 10 million as our liability, it is Treasury bills. As we mentioned before, we are practicing also with cash basis. So in cash basis, we just accounted as debit for the value of money that we actually received, which is RM 9 million, and credit into consolidated loan funds account RM 9 million, as mentioned before. We're moving into a second process, right? In accrual basis, as in slide, the amount of discount value must be amortized accordingly followed through the terms of maturity. For example, here terms 364 days and discount rate. The amount of amortization has been calculated in our accounting system automatically. However, for cash basis, this process is not applicable for cash basis. Ladies and gentlemen, for the question number 14, for treasury bills, there is no auction activities. Okay, there is no auction activities. It will be redeemed accordingly with when meet the date of maturity. For accounting treatment, we will debit our treasury bills in accrual basis and consolidated loan account cash basis and credit bank account amounting RM 10 million. Meanwhile, we will charge discount value RM 1 million in cash basis as our expense during maturity. All right. Just now about accounting treatment, now about reporting. As mentioned before, we are maintaining cash basis and accrual basis. Reporting for cash basis, in modified cash basis, treasury bill will be reported as part of statement for consolidated loan account, which be disclosed, balance carry forward, activities of receipt, payments, and the balance at the end of the year. And as well as in cash basis also reporting as memorandum account of liability. For accrual basis, our reporting will be reported in statement of financial position as part of federal debts, and the detailing will be in the note of the account with the information of period maturity within 12 months and more than 12 months. As presentation, treasury bills is in a short-term loan, so it will be just in the maturity within 12 months. So, Encik Amir, that's all from Accountant General Departments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Abda Azdiani Ahmad Toha, for addressing these interesting topics. Is there any question from Timor-Leste or other representatives regarding on this topic?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the presentation on the accounting of Treasury Bill, which is very interesting topic. You mentioned about accounting in Malaysia in regard to Treasury Bill, and which is it was mentioned that case-based accounting, then modified case-based accounting, then accrual basis reporting. So is that the accrual-based reporting, is it just to address the accounting part of the Treasury Bill, or there are another reasons for using accrual-based reporting based on Malaysia's experience? Thank you.
Basically, for our reporting, we do have at the moment we are doing modified cash basis and as well as accrual basis. So meaning for the accrual basis, it doesn't mean for TBs only, but for the rest of accounting also we are using it. But due to the act that we use right now, the main report that we issued out for our financial statement is based on modified cash basis.
As for today's discussion, because today is a big topic is Treasury Bills. So the example of reporting, we just focus on Treasury Bills. Actually, we are disclose all payments, all revenues that we are received for the government.
It will be complete set of financial statements. It's not only on Treasury bills. So, in a way, how you're going to report your TB, it depends on which basis that you are using currently. So at the moment, since as mentioned before, we are also in the midst of transition towards accrual accounting. We are preparing both, but for tabling in the parliament, we are only doing for a modified cash basis.
I have a question. Thank you for your presentation. Now I would like to inform you, Timor-Leste government now implemented a case-based method of recording income and expense. Based on your experience in Malaysia government, we need your good recommendation for Timor-Leste governments. All for all record the T-bill transaction in case-based accounting or accrual-based accounting. So,
If at the moment you are using cash basis accounting, then you should continue reporting even with the new treasury bill that you are to introduce. Then you have to continue to use the cash basis accounting. That I would suggest. And later on, if you are to change to the accrual base, then can be done later. It doesn't mean when you are to issue the treasury bill, you have to change your accounting basis. That is not the issue. That is not the question. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Harima. Is there any further question from Timor-Leste? If that's so, I think we final to the presentation. On behalf of Malaysia, as the co-host for this online study visit, I would like to thank again all the presenters, the PEMNA Secretariat for organizing this session, and congratulate the audience for being active participants. Hopefully, this session will be beneficial to everyone, especially to Timor-Leste's representative. Before we end this session, I would like to invite PEMNA Secretariat to make an announcement regarding the post-event activities such as evaluation and post-event report. Please welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Amir. Again, this is Jamie Park from the PEMNA Secretariat, and on behalf of the Secretariat, I would like to express my gratitude to all of you for your contribution and for conducting a wonderful meeting today. And there is an announcement that I would like to share with. So after today's session, Timor-Leste will be asked to complete 2 post-event activities. One is the evaluation, and the other is writing a post-event report. I'll be sending out a detailed email later on, so please keep in mind. And again, thank you all for participating, and I hope everyone had a wonderful time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jamie, and thank you all. Have a good day. Bye.